Hey folks, welcome back. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how often you should be cleaning your guns. The answer really is going to depend on the condition and the environment. But I think by and large, a lot of the recommendations thrown out there might be a little bit more than you need to. There are some folks who never clean it, which I don't think it's a good idea. And then ranging to the other end of the spectrum who, clean it after every single time they use it. Now, I don't use these guns ever in competition or anything like that. I've always fired them indoors, so I understand there can be a difference in there. It could get dirty, and of course, that's a different situation. Um, but I found out that there's different degrees of fouling depending on the type of guns and the materials in them, and then how many shots of course that you fired through them. So I want to show real quick the three different types that I'm going to be looking at today. So the first one, of course, is I'm going to show this USP right here. So this one is a VFC or Umarex actually. Now, this one tends to foul quite a bit. Um, the ones that foul quite a bit are the ones that have the metal barrel and slides installed. There's a lot of wear and tear on these, and there's a lot of fine powder and paint residues that get stuck in the slide action after really any amount of use. And then if we go to something like a Marui, this is a Glock 19 right here. This one actually uses, in addition to the polymer frame, it uses a polymer barrel and slide. In this sense, there's a lot less friction being used, and when you cycle the slide, it's a lot easier and a lot smoother. Not to say that there isn't any fouling though, because there still is, because there's still some metal parts in the inside. You can't get away with all polymer based functions there, but it's a significant reduction since the barrel and the slide is now plastic. But there is some fouling. We'll get to that a little bit. And then, of course, the last and probably the highest into fouling is when you have a metal barrel, but then you have a metal slide and then a steel barrel. This eats away even more and causes even more residue to develop, and at a quicker rate too. So let me show you all the different results, and then we'll talk a little bit more about them. Alright, so first up, this is the HK USP, or the VFC one. Again, metal barrel, metal slide. And as you can see, after about 500 shots, I'll say less, but 300 to 400 shots in this case right here, this is kind of what it looks like. Pretty dirty, right? And keep in mind, again, this is all fired indoors. Again, nothing was really ever fired outside, so it's kind of consistent. But as you can tell, it gets pretty disgusting in there. So next, what I was going to do is I'm going to tear it down, clean it up, and then fire it about 250 shots, which is roughly the average use in a game, and we'll see how that looks like afterwards. All right, so after I cleaned it, I put in about 200, maybe 250 shots. Again, all indoors again, to see how it gets, how much dirt and grime gets into it. And as you can see, and we're taking it down here, the barrel, of course, has a lot of fouling. The grease, obviously attracts a lot of dust and particles, and so those parts gets pretty dirty quickly too. But as you can see here, after just about 250, 250, which is a pretty reasonable amount if you use this as a primary weapon or a primary gun in your games or any of the competitions here, that's a reasonable amount, and this is the amount of fouling that comes out of it, which is kind of a decent amount, but wouldn't say it's too much or anything like that. It's not enough to clog up the gun or cause any major jams or malfunctions. But it is kind of a bit, especially only after just 250. Now, this is what it looks like. That's still not that bad compared to how it looked like after 300, 400 rounds. But as you can tell, it is building up there, and it is creeping up there to get dirtier. Now let's compare that with a plastic or a polymer barrel and slide like the Marui. Now, as you can see, this is a Marui right here. This is after actually about 600 to 700 rounds actually between the last cleaning. I didn't get an initial one because I just didn't have it at the time, but I was able to put this many rounds through it. As you can tell, it's not that not too dirty actually. Yes, there are some fouling from the back, the bearings, the blowback housing unit. Those are all metal, so they will cause some dirt and grime. Again, all fired indoors. The purple or the blue or green teal looking plastic like thing, those are from exploded paint rounds that kind of got stuck in there with the oils. That's not really normal. That's because I was experimenting with different rounds, but by and large, you can tell that this is significantly cleaner cleaner running compared to the metal on metal USP as you saw earlier. And we fired way more shots out of this than in the previous one. So that's one example of a different system in the fouling that you can expect to see from it. Now, I don't exactly have a video or photo of the steel barrel on a metal slide because I just haven't shot that many rounds. This is the WE Glock 17 right here, Gen 3. Not that it really matters, but it uses an upgraded Garter steel barrel since the original metal barrel broke. This is like years and years ago, but I put in the Garter barrel right here. It's steel, and that eats a lot at it. I haven't had a chance to use that many rounds in it just yet, like I said, but this is a white sheet. Just to give you all an idea, if I just did this and just wiped that like that, well, that's just after a few shots so far. So I guess it's not that dramatic on camera. Well, but trust me, take my word off for it. I can't remember when was the last time I used this. I haven't used this I haven't used this in a while actually. So it's still fairly clean. But trust me, again, it gets a lot dirtier for this. And I guess it's because the steel barrel eats away a lot faster than when they're made of the same material. So what this comes down to is, what does that mean exactly? We see that they do get dirtier. That's true. Certain types and certain materials make it get dirtier quicker than others. So how often do you need to clean it is the real question, right? And I think it really just maybe for the most part, for most guns, I would say about a year. Every year or so, I think it's reasonable to change it. And the reason why I say that is, yes, we saw that the USP, for example, got incredibly dirty for a relatively short amount of time, and if you were to continue using that like that for about a year, it would get even worse, right? And yes, when it's that dirty, the slide is a lot more sluggish. When you pull it back, it is, and let go forward, it's a lot more sluggish. And then immediately after you clean it and you cycle the slide a few times, you'll notice it's a lot smoother. The slide actually goes a lot smoother. So there's a lot of friction, and there are some significant impacts from having a dirty slide and interior. But it's not to the point where it jams or anything like that. We remember that last video we made, and if you haven't seen that video, go back and check it out. It's kind of a cool one where we did a dust test with the WE-XM177 where we were throwing in baking soda, we were throwing in baby powder, and in that situation, it took a significant amount of dirt or abuse, and actually was still cycling. If you remember from that video, though, the only thing that really caused it to have some malfunction was when it was the grittier baking soda, and not on the upper portion, but more so at the magazine. So what happened was that a significant amount of, or not even just like a tiny bit amount of finer, but not too fine, like sand-like particle sizes came down the magazine. And so when that happens, the rounds are jammed between the walls of the magazine, and maybe the followers jammed back there. And what happens is it can't continuing to feed rounds upward. There's not a lot of spring tension to do it because it's all stuck, like I don't have any rounds here, but it would be stuck like in this position here, and additional rounds won't be fed upwards. So in that situation, it does cause jams. So if you're out in a game and you drop the gun in sand or anything like that, that is going to cause problems, and I would recommend cleaning it. But for the most part, if it's more like ran indoors, you can probably get away with once a year. For something that's more clean running, like the Marui here, where it's all polymer based for the most part, I would definitely say yes, a year is totally fine, and you can clean it afterwards. Something like a metal on metal, very common with WEs or pretty much any other high-end gas blowback system. You'll get, I would say, about close to 6 months to a year would be pretty reasonable too. Again, if you're outside, and it's dirtier a lot more, or you put a lot more rounds through it, maybe a couple thousand, then yeah, I think that's reasonable to change it even earlier. And then if something like that tends to foul a lot, like when you're using different materials, like this Glock right here, I would say a lot sooner. And they all have the same principles where you wrap the slide after it's clean, it's a lot smoother and the action is more crisp. You're likely to get more gas efficiency that way because you're not fighting as much friction to cycle the action. Now, you might be wondering, well, why, what's the harm in cleaning it? And I don't know the answer for sure in that one, but my experience is for some guns, it's just more difficult to field strip. Because even though these are all Glock models right here, this is, for example, really easy to take apart. You can just pull down the notches with, hold on. Well, you know what I mean. This one tends to be a little bit tougher, I guess. You kind of need there we go, to pop it out a little bit. So it's not as an easy takedown. And when I did that, I always get a little nervous that I might be breaking something because I have to hold these down and kind of really, press against my body and push this slide off of it. And so I'm afraid that it might be, breaking something, or eventually putting a lot of force on some parts that might cause it to break. So I don't want to, in my opinion, take it apart that many times if I don't have to, and if it's not that necessary, because I feel like that could increase the wear and tear of the gun by doing that. Same thing with the Marui here, right? This is a better example, I would say, because this gun is a very clean gun operating system, as we saw before. But taking this apart is also difficult too, in the sense that you're also forcing a lot of the parts down. They're not kind of a smooth takedown action. You kind of are forcing parts, especially since some of these are polymer parts. What happens is that they require some flexing, and so I'll just show you. If I'm taking this part, again, you kind of have to kind of smack it a little bit, and again, I don't think that's good for it if you don't have to do it. But inside, for example, if you want to remove some of these parts, they require, they're plastic, and you kind of have to pry them apart. And I think that is, plastic is meant to be flexed a little bit. There should be more flexibility, but I don't know if that's necessarily good for, for the gun, long-term wise. So that's my opinion on why I don't think they necessarily should be field strip that often and clean when you don't need to. So that's kind of a lengthy video, but I hope you folks found this kind of helpful and informative. And let me know what y'all think in the comments section below. If there's, you clean your guns more often or anything like that, feel free to drop a comment. All right, folks, thanks a lot. See y'all next time.